Welcome back to the third video in this tutorial series on writing unit and integration tests for your React and Redux web applications. Now, in the last video, we looked at testing our components, both functional components and classes. Now, in this video, we're going to be looking at PropTypes and specifically how to test them. Now, here I'm in the official repository for PropTypes, and as you can see, there are a number of ways you can test your PropTypes. Now, PropTypes are a great way to validate the data types of the props passed to your components. They're also a great way to document your component. There are a number of different things that you can test for. So for example, you can test that a prop passed to your component is an array, a boolean, function, number, etc. Now, before we get started, I just want to encourage you to visit the official playlist for this series. As we record more videos and go through the series, we will add them here. There will be a direct link in the description of this video. You can also find it by visiting us, SimpleTut, on YouTube and searching our channel and our playlists. Now, of course, at the point of this recording, this is only the third video of the series, but of course, if you're watching this at some point in the future, then the entire series will be available here. Now, if you have watched the previous videos of this series, you will also know that at the end of each video, we are going to be pushing our code to an official repository on our GitHub page, which you can find again by either clicking the link we will post in the description of this video, or you can visit our GitHub page, which is github.com/simpletut, and clicking through into the repository for this project, which is titled Testing React Redux with Jest and Enzyme. Now, if you have watched any of our previous videos, and again, I encourage you to do so if you haven't already, but we are working on an application, and the idea of the application we're building is for us to build something that will allow us to develop the various different components that I want to show you how to write tests for. Now, looking at where we left off in the last video, we've already made significant progress, particularly on the layout. As you can see, we have the header section with our logo, we have a headline component, and if we come back over to our designs, that is really the main layout components for our app. And again, just to go over it, we have this header section, we have a headline section with a page title and a description. We then have this button, and when we click that button, we make an asynchronous request to an external API. We fetch that data, and then we render it out on the page. Now, in this tutorial, we're going to continue working with our headline component, specifically adding prop types and then testing them. I also already have my application running, so if you want to recap on how to run the application that we've been building, then please reference one of our previous videos. Now, the very first thing that we need to do is actually install the dependency for prop types so that we can actually start using and require them in our project. To do that, then all we need to do is visit the repository. You can find that by either searching Google, or I will actually post a link in the description of this video. You just have to search for PropTypes. And once we actually are on that repository, there is an install command, which I'm just going to copy this. I'll then open up the terminal that I am running. I'm going to quit the current processes that I am running, which is both for testing and that is just running the application. I'm going to paste in that command, and that is going to install the PropTypes dependency. Currently, in our headline component, we are destructuring header and description from props. If header returns undefined, then we return null and we do not render the component. Otherwise, we do render the component with the header and description that are received. Now, if we look at app.js, which is where we include the headline component and pass props, then we are currently passing two strings, and this is what the component expects to receive. Now, for you to really understand the importance of passing and validating the data types of props, I need to show you a breaking change and more of an extreme example. So obviously here we're expecting a string, so let's actually pass an object. So I'm going to save this, and as we have hot reloading, we're going to see immediately this has been a breaking change, and the message in the error we receive is that objects are not valid. So as you can see, it's really important that we do validate the data types, and that's exactly what I'm going to show you how to implement. So now let's go ahead and implement PropTypes into our headline component. So to do that, the first thing we need to do is import PropTypes from PropTypes, and then below our headline class, we'll specify them. So headline.PropTypes. And again, this is a lowercase p. We are not using the library that I'm importing here. This is a lowercase p PropTypes equals an object where we specify the data types for header. And this is where we will use the library that we just imported. So again, PropTypes, and this allows us to specify the data type that we expect. So we're going to be specifying here that we expect a string, and actually the same thing for the description, so PropTypes.string. So if I save this and I come over to the browser, we're not seeing any errors because currently we are passing strings. But let's actually go over and make that same breaking change. So instead of passing a string for header, let's pass an object. Let's save that and come back over to the browser. And again, we're going to see the same error message. But if I come into the console and I scroll to the top, you're going to see we have an additional error message, which is for invalid prop for the prop of header. We received an object supplied to the headline component where we expected a string. So that's an immediate notification to us as a developer. We know exactly what the problem is. We're passing an object. We should be passing a string. So it's a very clear message and very easy for us to go back and fix it and figure out why that error is occurring. So let's just reset this. Let's pass a string here. Or maybe I'll show you another example. Let's pass a number. Okay, and I'm going to save that. And although this is not a breaking change, we still see an error message in the console. We still see, but now we're seeing that we're passing a number instead of a string. So again, it's very, very useful and very important that we do validate the data types that we are passing to our components. Now this is a slightly simple example, right? I mean, we're just basically testing two strings, but what about if we're passing an object? We need to validate that the structure of that object, the key value pairs, are correct. We need to validate those too. So I'm going to show you an example. Come back over to app.js, and I'm going to define an array of objects. Okay, so I'm going to create a temp array. It's going to equal an array which contains an object, and in this we're going to have the following key value pairs. We're going to have a first name, and let's just say that this is Joe. We're going to have a last name, so we'll specify lname, and this will be blogs, and we'll have an email. Just this can be joeblogs@gmail.com. We'll have an age, and age will be 24. And then we'll also have an online status. So online status set to true. So, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pass this as a prop to the same headline component. So to do that, I'm just going to have this temp array and pass the temp array. So if I now come back over to my React component or my web browser, I'm going to use the React Dev Tools. I'm going to go into look for this components. This is our headline component. And you can see that if we look at the props that this component is receiving, of course we have the description and header, they're both strings, but we now have an array that contains an object. We have obviously a number, we have strings, and we also have a Boolean which we need to validate. Now let's come back over to our headline component and add this to our prop types. So we need to validate the data types of the array of objects that we're going to expect to receive. So let's go ahead and add temp array, and this is going to equal PropTypes dot array of, because it is an array of objects. So we're going to expect PropTypes dot shape, and we are going to pass an object here where we define the various keys and the data types that we expect those to be in. So let's go ahead and add one for fname, and we expect this is going to be PropTypes.string, and I'm just going to copy this to save some time. Then we have lname, PropTypes.string. We also have email, and again PropTypes.string, and of course we also then have age, and this is going to be PropTypes.number, and then we have a Boolean value, so this is going to be online status, and it's going to be PropTypes.bool. And if we come back over and just verify that, so we have online status, age, email, first name, last name. So let's come back over to the browser, and again, we are not getting any errors. But let's come back over here and to our app.js. Let's change perhaps, rather in online status, rather than adding a Boolean, which is true, let's make it a number. So let's say 1. Let's save it. And again, it's not a breaking change, but we are seeing that error message. We are getting a number, expected a Boolean. So you can see that it is clearly working. Let's revert that change back to a Boolean. We're not getting any errors in the browser. Now, although we have now successfully implemented prop types into our component, it is important that we write tests to make sure that our prop types are always configured correctly. To do that, we're going to be using and working with another library called check PropTypes. This is a really great tool that we can use to write our tests. So to do that, we need to go ahead and install this as a dependency. This is actually going to be a dev dependency. So again, I'm going to quit these processes, and I'm going to go ahead and npm install this. Now that we have installed check PropTypes, we're ready to write our tests. Before we do that, I'm going to use the yarn start command to reboot our application. I'm also going to run our test script. So over here, I'm going to write yarn run test, and that's going to immediately start watching our test files. So let's go ahead and open up our spec file for our headline component. This is where we have all of our tests for this component. And at the top of the file, I need to import our check PropTypes library. So I'm going to import check PropTypes from check PropTypes, and within my main describe function, I'm going to create a new describe, and we're going to pass a string here that describes the tests that we'll be including within this describe function. So we're going to be checking our prop types. We're going to pass it a function, and within this describe function is where we'll have our tests. So the first test we're going to write will be that our prop types, it should not throw a warning. So the reason that I have described this test as checking that it doesn't throw a warning is because that is how check prop types works. So if there is an error with our prop types, it is going to throw a warning. So where we actually expect, we need to expect that it returns undefined. So that may make more sense to you once we've actually written the test. But before we can, we need to define a new constant for our expected props, and that is going to equal an object. And we need to replicate the schema we defined in our headline component for prop types. So let's go ahead and do that. The first thing is the first key we need to define is for our header. I'm just going to use test header as a string. Then our description, so I'll use a test description as a string. And then we have this temp array, and that is going to equal an array which has an object, and within that we have fname that contains a string, so I'll just call this test fname. Then we have lname, so test lname. We also have an email key, so I'll have like test@email.com. We also have age. I'll just pass this a number, let's say 23. And then we also have a Boolean value for online status, and I'm going to set this to false. So if we compare this schema with that on our PropTypes object, then that should match successfully. So we're now ready to call our PropTypes function. So to do that, I'm going to create another constant, call it props error, and it's going to equal check PropTypes. And we need to pass, the first thing we need to pass here is actually this PropTypes object that we defined here. So to do that, we've already imported our headline component within the spec file. So I'll just pass headline.PropTypes. Then we need to pass it our expected props. Then we need to tell it, well, we need to tell PropTypes what we're testing. So we're testing props. And then finally, the name of the component, which we can access through headline.name. Okay, so now we can actually expect something. So we can expect props error to be undefined. Now, if I come back over to our tests, we can clearly see that this test is passing. So here we have check PropTypes, and it should not throw a warning. So that is passing, and we have successfully validated that. So let's actually make this fail. So rather than passing a number here, let's pass a Boolean. Let's say that this is false, and save it. And you can immediately see that that test is now failing. So we know for a fact that our test is working correctly. So let's revert that change, save it, and again come back over here. You can see again our test is passing. At this point, we have successfully tested our PropTypes and all of our tests are passing. But I think it's time that we looked at doing a small code refactor because some of our code is a little bit repetitive. Now, if we look at this check PropTypes function, we're passing 4 arguments. This takes quite a lot of configuration, and I think we can simplify it with a utility function. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut the line where we are importing this check PropTypes library. We don't need it in our spec file anymore. I'm going to go over to our utility file where we currently have this findByTest attribute function. And at the top of the file, I'm going to import check PropTypes. I'm then going to create a new function. We are going to need to export this. So I'm going to export const. I'm going to call it check props, and it's going to accept 2 arguments as a function. The first being component, and the second being expected props. Great. So the first thing we're going to do is create a constant. This is going to be props errors. And we're going to use this check PropTypes function. And here we're just going to, first of all, pass the PropTypes object from the component that we're passing. So component.PropTypes. Second being the expected props. Then we need to specify what we're testing. We're testing props. And then finally, the component name, we can access that through component.name. And then I'm simply going to return it. So return props error. I'm then going to come back over to our spec file. We're importing this findByTest attribute function. I'm also now going to import check props. I'm also now going to import check props. I'm going to come back down to our test, and instead of us directly using check PropTypes, I'm going to delete that, and I'm going to use this check props utility function. And all we now need to pass it is our headline component that we've already imported above and expected props, which we have defined here. And then we just simply do the same. We expect props errors to be undefined. Let's save that and come back over to our terminal where we are running our tests. And again, you can see all of our tests parsing. Now at this point we have successfully added prop types to our headline component and written tests. So I think it's a good point for us to check in our code. So over here in my terminal window, I'm going to do a git status. And you can see that before I started this tutorial, I created a new feature branch called PropTypes. And these are the changes that we have made throughout this tutorial. So I'm going to go ahead and do a git add, clear that down, do a git status. Now this is also checked in the git log package log file. So I'm going to reset head. I want to remove that from this commit. So I'm going to remove the package log file. Let's do a git status. And again, that's looking much better. So let's go ahead and commit that. So git commit. And I'm just going to call this adding prop types to our headline component. And then we can clear that down, do another git status. You can see we have successfully committed that code. So let's push it. So we can go ahead and push that. So let's go ahead and do a git push origin, and we're going to push it up to a feature branch. And following this tutorial, I will merge that with the master. And that brings us to the end of this tutorial on testing React prop types. In the next video, we are going to implement Redux into our application so that we can start testing Redux components. But again, I would like to encourage you to visit our official YouTube channel and playlist for this series. As we record more videos, we will add them to this playlist. But we have a great deal of content on our channel, and I encourage you to check that out. Again, there will be a direct link in the video description, or you can visit our channel and search for the content yourself. As you already know, we have an official repository for this project. As you saw earlier in this video, at the end of each video, we will push the code that we write to this repository. So if you would like to clone this project or go through the code I write in a finer detail, then feel free to check out this repository. Again, there'll be a link in the description of this video. And finally, if you did enjoy this video, if you do like the content that we are posting, please like us on Facebook. You can find us facebook.com/SimpleTut. This is a great way for you to stay in touch with us. As we release new content, we will post it here, and that is a great way for you to stay updated as we release new videos for this and future series and videos. Please, please, please like, comment, and subscribe. Your support goes a long way to ensuring we can continue to provide the content that you love. Once again, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.